All right, I got the green light. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. نيابة عن المركز الوطني للتعليم الإلكتروني نرحب بكم في انضمامكم معنا في جلسة تعزيز المهارات وإعادة التأهيل لمهارات جديدة والتعلم مدى الحياة. وأسعد أنا محدثكم الدكتور رامي بن إبراهيم السكران بإدارة الجلسة، والتي تأتي ضمن برنامج المؤتمر الدولي التعليم الإلكتروني لتنمية القدرات البشرية الذي ينظمه المركز الوطني للتعليم الإلكتروني خلال الفترة بين 24 وحتى 27 من الشهر الحالي. كما تعلمون الترجمة الفورية متوفرة باللغة العربية لهذه الجلسة. الرجاء الضغط على أيقونة الترجمة في أسفل الشاشة إن رغبتم بذلك. إن كان لديكم أسئلة يمكنكم وضعها في خانة الدردشة سواء باللغة العربية أو باللغة الإنجليزية، وسيتم الرد على أسئلتكم في نهاية الورشة بإذن الله. Good afternoon from the capital of Saudi Arabia, Riyadh City, on behalf of the National E-Learning Center and the International Conference on E-Learning for Human Capability Development, we welcome you all to this session where we will be discussing the country and region experience for upskilling, reskilling, and lifelong learning. Allow me to introduce myself as the moderator for this session. I'm Dr. Rami Sakran, and it is my pleasure to introduce our distinguished panelists for this session. Our first speaker for the session is Mr. Navanat Samia, who's the head of Future Skilled Growth and Learner Success at NASCOM. Mr. Navanat has more than 30 years of experience spanning top global MNCs, Indian blue chips, government bodies, and startups. Mr. Navanat has spent significant time with Tata, IBM, GE, apart from various entrepreneurial ventures. Our second speaker is Engineer Anas Al-Dafer, who's the CEO of Human Capability Development Program, which is one of the programs of Saudi Arabia Vision 2030. Engineer Anas has extensive experience in public transformation, e-transformation, and strategy and management consulting in local and international organizations. Prior to joining the Human Capability Development Program, Engineer Anas was the Strategy and Planning Vice President at the National Transformation Program. Last but not least, our third speaker is Ms. Prakina Shumaki, who's the Director of Lifelong Learning Platform, European Civil Society Education since 2016, which is a platform that represents over 40 European-wide civil society networks in the field of education from early childhood to adult education, including formal, non-formal, and informal learning providers and learners. Here are a few guidelines for the session for the participant. Interpretation is available in Arabic for this session, and you can activate the interpretation icon in your Zoom page. At the end of the session, we will have about 10 minutes for Q&As, and if you have any questions, you might post them in the chat, either in Arabic or in English. Now, we'll go ahead and start with Mr. Navanat Samia for his presentation. Mr. Navanat, the mic is with you.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Rami, and good afternoon, good evening to everybody. What I'm going to do is let me try and see if I can share my screen with all of you and just pull together a presentation. 1 second. Yep. Dr. Rami, is my screen visible?
That is correct, it's visible.
Fantastic. So, what I'm going to talk about in the next 15-20 minutes is about the digital revolution that is being, run silently in India. It is a transformational journey that we've taken, primarily because we know that technology is changing, very, very rapidly. And what we know today is what we know today, but we don't know what tomorrow holds. And if we have to continue to sustain the momentum that we have generated as a nation in terms of the ability to provide digitally skilled manpower to the globe, we have to continue to reinvent ourselves, which precisely is what we are talking about here, which is skilling, reskilling, and upskilling. So the whole idea of starting this, which is an initiative of NASCOM, just a quick introduction on NASCOM for those who are not aware. NASCOM is the IT industry body for India. We have pretty much every large IT company as our member. We understand and follow trends on IT across the globe. And a couple of years back, we ran a study with McKinsey, and we realized that the kind of technology skills that we have, currently, if we continue with them, there is a distinct possibility that for every one job every 24 jobs that we have, there'll be one qualified person available. So we need to reskill. And it's with that sometime last year before actually now, in November 2020, Government of India and NASSCOM got together, and this is the first of its kind initiative where industry, academia, government, and of course, at the core of it, learners got together to start building content which will be consumed by people in the industry and also freshers in order for them to make them future ready and de-risk their future. So with that, let me start with the need. Why new age skills? So our global digital transformation market is expected to grow from the current around 450 odd billion dollars in 2017 to almost $2.5 trillion by 2025. India alone, which is right now a $200 billion economy, is looking to hit $1 trillion on IT alone by 2025. As of now, 54% of all employees working in the industry will require significant reskilling and upskilling. So we don't have an option. In India alone, demand for almost about 230,000 AI professionals by 2021. Almost about 90,000 university students will have to take up these jobs, and they'll have to be skilled. Of all the IT related jobs, almost 60 to 65% is likely to change over the next 4 to 5 years. And this is what we think now. It can actually be 3 years. It can actually even be 2 years. One really doesn't know the speed at which technologies are changing, and therefore we have to keep pace with the changing technology. And clearly, there's no debate, at least in our mind, that talent is going to be the new competitive advantage for companies as well as nations. And therefore, as a nation and as an association which is supporting companies in the IT space as NASSCOM, we believe that the time is ripe for us to start looking at new age skills. So that's the why part. Let me come to the what. So what is it that we need to do? So we actually talk to the industry, we talk to customers across the globe, we talk to academics, and we identified that there are 10 top skills of the future, which are the emerging technologies, which we need to worry about. So the first, of course, is artificial intelligence, the blockchain, big data analytics, cybersecurity, very, very critical, cloud computing, especially in today's world, 3D printing, AR, VR, web mobile design. And this is apart from the basics, which is, the coding languages and the programming languages. But I want to spend more time talking on the right-hand side of the slide, which is professional skills. So unlike in the past, when professional skills used to be primarily your ability to interact with the customer, maybe some teamwork, maybe some bit of communication training, but it is changing very, very rapidly now. So any youngster coming out of school in today's world needs to have the ability to think design, to innovate, needs to have the ability. One of the we keep saying this to all our learners. Excuse me. That one of the very, very critical, more than artificial intelligence, more than cybersecurity, more than cloud computing, the biggest skill is the ability to learn. So the attitude to continuous learning is very, very critical. Of course, everything is now project driven. So you have to be good at project management. You have to be, of course, a good communicator. And then, I won't touch upon all of them, but, end of the day, digital leadership, irrespective of what stream you are in, irrespective of whether you're an engineer or you're a science graduate or you're a lawyer, or you're a doctor, you need to have a sense of digital fluency. Without that, you will not be able to succeed in the rapidly changing world. So basically, the what to answer the why, the what's are skilling people on emerging technologies, and B, more importantly, skilling people on new age professional skills. And I can't emphasize more the need for continuous learning in this. So this essentially became the backbone of a platform that we call Future Skills, which is what I represent. It's a joint venture, a partnership between Government of India and NASSCOM, and we have courses from pretty much every big name in the industry. It's an aggregator of aggregator platform. There are all there are labs for actual practice. There are practice sessions, there are videos, there are interactive sessions, there are theory sessions. And at the end of it, depending on your appetite as a learner, you can either just get the basics, which is just basic digital fluency, or you can go up to maybe a 40-50 hour foundational skills, and climb the ladder to deep skills, which are more 80, 90, 100-hour kind of programs. You can pick specific streams within each of these blocks and build your skill around those streams. The good news with this is, and which is what I alluded to before, is that it is linked to the industry. Therefore, whatever you consume on this is curated by the industry. And therefore, all the skilling and upskilling that our learners get on this is linked to employability. So it is linked to ensuring that we bridge the talent gap for the industry. And at the same time, it is linked to ensuring that we enhance the skill of the learner in order for them to become highly employable. So both the gaps we are trying to bridge through this platform. And as we speak, so I'm talking about the data as of this morning, we have close to about 1.5 million people onboarded on the platform. And as of now, almost about 610,000 people learning some course or the other on the platform. Our target is to take it up to almost 1 million people by the end of 2025, who would be certified and ready to serve the industry in India and to serve the industry globally. So how do we want to do that? I mean, we have to do an ecosystem alignment. And that's what I was talking about. So offer relevant content and services to motivate the learners to upskill. So, digital fluency, like I talked about, which is basic. Then there are some badges and certifications which are industry recognized. So once you start consuming a course, you start getting certifications and badges, and every certification and badge you get gets you closer to a certain kind of job role that you can aspire for. And of course, there are incentives for learning, and I know that we have a Q&A. If there are questions around what those incentives are, I'll be more than happy to answer them. But there are incentives by the government, there are incentives by the placement agencies, there are incentives by the industry to ensure that the learner is motivated to consume these courses. And of course, like I said, on the right-hand side, it is in collaboration with the right set of stakeholders and ecosystem players. So there's government, which has funded this platform, the skill councils, the National Skill Development Corporation, the education bodies, the planning bodies, they are all engaged in giving input to this platform. Similarly, the industry, like I said, is very deeply embedded. So anything you consume, we keep telling our learners that even if you go to Google today and you search for, let's say, artificial intelligence free courses, you'll probably get 100,000 hits. But which is the one that you want to consume? That is the important question which most learners don't get. That is where we have made the difference by making an industry-led learning ecosystem where the industry is identified what the learner ought to be learning, at least as of now, in terms of alignment with their markets. And of course, get best-in-class courses, training partners with a simple goal to reskill and upskill about 1 million people over the next 3 years. And this number, as we speak, is increasing. So, fingers crossed. But we really think by 2025 we will have 1 million to 1.5 million people skilled with specific skills on the technologies and the professional skills I talked about on the previous slide, through a combination of this ecosystem, which is really the how. It is actually very simple. The whole idea here is to engage all stakeholders. I will give you a few examples. So, apart from IT industry, which is the usual suspect, so many of you would have heard of names like Infosys, Wipro, TCS, who definitely have engagement with this platform. They engage with universities early. So in the 3rd and the 4th year of engineering, they will engage with the students so that they start getting ready for jobs when they graduate. There are actual projects from these companies which are given to the students, and we run hackathons where individually or as teams, they try to solve those problems, multiple levels of hackathons. So we bring in gaming, we bring in competition in order to make learning exciting. Similarly, we have industry, which is non-IT. So, automobile industry, healthcare industry, fintech, they are again contributing to content on this platform because, like I said earlier, none of them are going to be, devoid of having to play in the digital ecosystem. And third is the product space. So, the hardware, mobiles, laptops, and everything that one can think of. Everything is, the chip design is changing. So, excuse me, I'm actually suffering from COVID, so I'm a little down right now. But I hope you'll excuse me for this. So that essentially is the ecosystem we are working with. And like I said, the idea is to make about 1 million, 1.5 million people industry ready for India and for the globe. So that's pretty much what I had to share. I'm very, very happy to connect with any one of you offline. You need support in terms of thinking through, wanting to set up a platform like this, wanting to engage with this platform. I'll be very happy to help you out, to help you think through. One last point. This platform, of course, is geotagged within India, but it is free to sign up for any Indian residing in India. So it's a free to sign up platform. Some courses are charged, some courses are deeply discounted. Even there, like I said, there are government incentives. So there's a huge revolution going on to try and develop a manpower pool, which is highly employable and which bridges the talent gap for the future. Dr. Rami, that's pretty much what I wanted to share. I hope it made sense to the participants. I'll be very happy to answer any questions if there are.
Mr. Navnath, we appreciate you and thank you so much. We wish you a very quick recovery from COVID.
Thank you so much.
I guess the COVID-19 nowadays has been going through everybody. So so we appreciate you coming through this tough time. We have a couple of questions for you, Mr. Navnath, but we'll keep them at the end of our session. That way we will have one question for each speaker, and then we'll move with more questions as the time permits. Now we'll go ahead and go with our next speaker, Mr. Anas, or Engineer Anas Al-Mudafer, for his presentation and for his remarks. Engineer Anas.
Thank you, Dr. Rami, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank the National E-Learning Center for organizing this event. It came right on time with the Education International Day, and also with the nations recovering and going back to the classrooms from the lockdown and the challenges that we suffered throughout the journey to fight COVID. I'll share the screen quickly, and I'll take you through some of the global reports when it comes to upskilling and reskilling and lifelong learning, and what are we doing here in the Kingdom to be at the forefront of preparing our citizens for the future and making sure that we are future ready. I just want to check, Dr. Rami, if the screen is clear now.
Yes, Engineer Anas, it's clear.
Perfect. So there is a clear need of skilling, upskilling, and reskilling. Major global organizations have reported that 30% of the workforce, of the global workforce, are expected to change profession by 2030 due to automation and rapid adaptation of technologies. 6 out of adults globally have minimum digital skills and computer skills. More than 33% of jobs will be transformed by technology, and we've seen this in the Kingdom and globally. Digital banking has eaten up so many jobs. No one goes to the bank nowadays. Similarly in insurance, and we see this also in different professions and sectors. The innovation will continue, the disruption will continue, and we believe so many things are about to change. Today, we drive gasoline cars and which run in the mechanical consumption engines, and we expect electric cars to emerge in the next few years, and it would require a whole sector to be developed in that front. So the program addressed those challenges. And we started at the basics. If we were to develop the human capabilities, what should we focus on? And we defined 4 key components that we need to focus on. First, the basic skills. And this is what we need to teach our K-12 students and preschool on the basic skills, the math and science and reading. And we expect digital skills to be a basic skills with the adoption of technology. Also, we added the future skills, where we focus more on the high order thinking skills, the social and emotional skills, and the physical and work skills. We didn't really focus on technology here because technology will change and we will have to adapt and embrace. So dealing with technology and understanding and being able to execute jobs that technology cannot execute is the future skills that we need to focus on. Of course, we have to also focus on the values and ensure that we promote the right values, as well as the knowledge that are related to the labor, to a certain sector, and help citizens to be ready to engage in the labor market. Access of knowledge are now easy with the information resources that are everywhere, and with Google you could research any information you need and you could get it. The focus on skills and skilling people to be ready for a future challenge. What we focus on in the program is future readiness. How do we make sure that every citizen is ready? We're not looking at people on their education journey, we're looking at the whole spectrum, from preschool until post-retirement. What we really aspire to achieve is to have a globally competitive citizen across the board, to make sure that we supply the right resources, human resources for the local labor market, as well as we compete globally on the international arena. The focus of the program to do this, we've developed the 3 strategic pillars. First, we have to have a resilient base for all citizens, where we focus on preschool and K-12, ensuring that we train and skill people from early children education all the way to the completion of K-12, with proper coaching and mentorship of what the future look like, what the labor market will look like, what the skills that are required, so people would be aware before choosing their pathways post-secondary education. So the second strategic pillar is the preparation for the labor market. So we focus on the future labor market. What will the future labor market look like, and how do we make sure that our universities and training institutes are aligned with the future needs? The third element, which is the lifelong learning, and this is something that is a necessity that we need to embrace and deal with, as the global reports are suggesting that most of jobs will be disrupted, and those people who are currently on those jobs need to have the opportunity to be reskilled and upskilled to maintain their relevance to the labor market, and to ensure that we are ready for any future challenges and disruption. And this is a responsibility across all universities, all government entities, as well as regulators and private sector and NGOs. So the whole ecosystem should collaborate and work together in order to create that synergy and readiness for the future. So there are clear challenges that we have identified when we're designing the program. We had suffered from imbalances between the supply and demand. We have misalignment in terms of quantity and quality with the output of the education system and the needs of the labor market. Also, we have some inactive segments of the population that we need to trigger and nudge and get them to and incentivize their contribution to the economy. Also, there has been globally a low focus on skilling and more focus on knowledge and information. We need to change that and focus on skill recognition. We didn't have much of globally on recognizing the skills. There has been some professional certificates, still not enough on a national and a global level to qualify people to be able to join the labor market. Last but not least, the future is the gig economy and entrepreneurship, and we need to make sure that we give it enough of training and preparation across the journey, and ensure that there are always opportunity for entrepreneurs and freelancers to embrace their startups and to be also supported across the spectrum, as well as preparing them with the right skills. So we are introducing all the entrepreneurial curriculum within high schools as well as universities, and also focus on certain majors. If you're studying finance, fintech curriculum would be there, and you would understand what are the trends on the fintech arena. Also, some of the interventions that we identified. We're setting up a unit for labor market supply and demand foresight, where we project what are the output of the education system, training institute, as well as the projections of labor market needs, as well as growth and disruptions on the labor market, locally and globally. Also, we are setting up a one-stop shop for career management guidance, where counseling and mentorship can be offered to all citizens. We set up a digital skills program for adults to make sure that digital skills are accessible. Digital skills training are accessible for all citizens, as well as we try to standardize the platform for distance learning. So we know the future is going to allow more trainings and personal development and self-training to be available online. So we started today on the governance of those platforms and how do we make sure that we ensure the quality of those platforms. Last but not least, we're working on a national skills framework where we have a clear skill system across all priority sectors with a skills recognition certificates where we license employees in certain professions and expand as we go in the next 10 years. So this is pretty much what we're trying to do on the program. Thank you again, Dr. Rami and our colleagues in the center for organizing this event, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Engineer Anas. That was very insightful. Again, we will keep the questions towards the end of the session, and we'll move with our third speaker, who's the final speaker in this session, Ms. Prakina Shumaki. Ms. Prakina, the mic is with you.
Good afternoon to everyone. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes, we can.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me, for having me at this conference. I'm really glad to come from the European region to share also our insights on this very important and very topical theme at the moment, and which became even more relevant as the pandemic kicked the world. Upskilling and reskilling is indeed one of the major focus of the organization I represent for, and I will share a few slides with you. But I would like to also congratulate the previous speakers for giving quite a good overview of the issue indeed. So I will not repeat what was already said, but rather try to bring our perspective to this topic and maybe enlighten the discussion to some extent. I hope you can see the presentation.
Yes, it's clear.
Perfect. So as I said, I represent the European Lifelong Learning Platform, which is the European network of civil society organizations representing education and training providers. So it's a very large network of networks that brings together education and training providers from early childhood education to adult education. And what we have in common is that we promote this holistic vision to education from cradle to grave, where learning starts as early as possible in our lives and it continues throughout it. And it's very important that the foundations for a successful lifelong learning are actually built at the childhood, because the curiosity and the ability to learn throughout life are things that are developed in our childhood. Therefore, it's very important that when we speak of upskilling, reskilling, and lifelong learning, we don't forget this holistic approach that is to start as early as possible, because we can cure, of course, later on with upskilling and reskilling reforms and build new skills for adults, but it's much harder exercise to do than starting earlier with building the foundations for that. So as I said, we are a 15 years old organization, and we have a very cross-sectoral approach to the issues. So we, among our membership, and I think it's important to describe that because it explains a bit how the landscape works in Europe. We are formal, non-formal, and informal education providers. What that means, I hope you basically know as well, but is that it's not only schools, it's not only universities, it's also adult education centers, professional training centers, youth organizations, community associations, other culture and sport clubs, or other organizations that provide non-formal education opportunities and further training. And we appreciate and we promote this diversity and this rich, let's say, learning environment. So we don't only consider schools as the only provider. We don't only consider universities as the only provider of learning. Learning can happen in many different environments, and it's it's important to value these different providers. And it has become even more important with the digital revolution, and it has become even more enriched. These learning environments are very diverse now, and providers are very diverse as well. So it's very important to mention that. Now, when it comes to the topic now in Europe, we are really at the heart of the discussions when it comes to how to prepare our society to the twin transition, so the greening and the digital transition. And when it comes to the digital transition, one of the major issues in Europe is the lack of basic skills. So we have first an issue of basic skills, and then we have an issue of basic digital skills. We have around 40% of adults in Europe that lack both. So in order to embrace this digital revolution and upskill and reskill people, we have to start from providing basic skills training and basic digital skills training in order to kind of bridge the digital divide that exists and provide opportunity to those that are excluded from them. And we speak more and more with the digital revolution of the empowering the empowered, because indeed who has opportunities to learn further today is those that have already qualifications, those that have already some digital skills to access new learnings online or new learning opportunities in general. And that leaves behind a lot of people that do not have the basic digital skills to access this learning. So the crisis, of course, made this even more evident. Inequalities in our societies were even more clear. We saw that some schools or training providers, universities were able to adapt and had the infrastructure to adapt, but others didn't. So they were left behind. And this created a lot of differences. And as I said, indeed, we saw that during the pandemic, we had more and more disadvantaged and marginalized groups that were excluded from these learning opportunities. And as I said also before, I think another element that in our policy reforms at the EU level and in the member states was probably not enough emphasized is that we rather went to look at the training provision in schools and in universities or in companies, but we didn't look at all these learning environments that deserved to be also put in this landscape. So these are some of the issues that we see. Then another issue that we saw with the digital revolution, but not only because of the pandemic, was indeed the problem of mental health and well-being related to digital education, e-learning in general. We were not ready to adapt our pedagogy online to the health, let's say, requirements and well-being requirements. So we had an immersive and a very intense shift to the online learning that was not adapted with the right pedagogy to not overwhelm learners, and we didn't even have the assessment methods adapted to it. So of course I'm generalizing, so I'm saying this in general terms. This was not the case for all member states, for all countries in Europe, and that was not the case for all universities or all training providers, but it was the case for the majority and for a big part of them. So it was important to highlight that we were not ready in this digital revolution that say, although the digital, it's not a new topic, it's not a new issue. We were starting to discuss about labor market changes already 10 years ago, even more. And yet we didn't progress enough or fast enough. And then we found ourselves with the crisis, with the pandemic, in front of this digital shifts, and we were not able to do that properly. And so we are actually now seeing a lot of burnouts in learners, in teachers, a lot of mental health issues and well-being in the education and training sphere. Another important aspect that I wanted to also share with you, that we're also trying to influence the EU agenda when it comes to the twin transitions, is really to see the link between the two. I think they are very much linked with each other. I think when speaking of digital can be a complementary and a support to the greening of our societies, and vice versa. But however, both of them need to be twinned together when it comes to reforms. So providing more training opportunities, being them online or in other forms, must also take into consideration new issues, environmental issues, and issues of sustainability. And training must be seen also as a sustainable approach. So we must look at skills that are for life, skills that are for adapting to any circumstances and to any changes of the society and of the labor market. We shouldn't have short-term, let's say, approaches where we see, okay, we are missing, I don't know, drivers, car drivers, and then we just skill them for driving a car. I'm just taking a stupid example, but what I meant by that is that we should look at the transversal skills. I think it was mentioned before by the professor as well, the engineer before, that indeed we should look at the transversal skills, the skills that are the foundation for helping learners to adapt to new labor market changes. And then, of course, the more technical skills will be developed in jobs or will be also further developed by doing. But it's very important that we provide people for these twin transitions with basic key competences that are very important, transversal competences. So some of the key messages I wanted to share with you and stop here maybe, and happy to have a discussion, was looking at the digital skills. I think it was mentioned as well. I was happy to see that digital skills are not just for labor market now, but also are for actively participating in the society, because we are moving more and more to e-democracy, e-citizenship, and participation, voting online, all this participation online, and that requires people to have these skills in order to be able to continue be part of the societal debates and society in general. And also the social utility of that. So when we develop vocational education and training and lifelong learning, we try to focus also at how this supports inclusion, diversity, empowerment, and excellence, so that people that are left behind of our systems are brought in, because they are a cost for our society to some extent. So this is very important. Another aspect is the investment in people and access to lifelong learning opportunities. So we should invest in soft and digital and hard digital technology infrastructures, and carefully consider integrating digital technology in schools, in institutions, with the learners and the teachers' need. Another point here is that what we have also maybe seen is that in this digital revolution, we must also rethink assessment. So how we evaluate learning, skills, competences, attitudes, and values, but also how we ensure equal learning opportunities for all. I think more or less these are some of the key points I wanted to share with you. And a key message that came out of our position paper in 2017 about digital, where we said it's not the digital that creates change, people do. So we should invest in people so that they can create change. Thank you again.
Thanks a lot, Ms. Burkina. We appreciate those remarks. We will reserve those questions that we received, and I'll circle back to Mr. Navnath. And Mr. Navnath, we received a couple of questions, and you mentioned multiple things actually that kind of align with the questions we received. And I'm looking at my notes, and you mentioned about 54% of the employees will need reskilling. And you also mentioned the emerging technologies, and you also mentioned we need to reinvent ourselves. So basically, this will need a lot of work as you, and I'm quoting you, the alignment within the ecosystem that we will have, which means we will require some kind of incentives. So my question to you, Mr. Navanat, in terms of incentives, what type of government incentives are provided for the learners for upskilling and reskilling through future skills initiatives that you mentioned?
Great question, Dr. Rami. And in the first instance, the whole platform is a partnership between government and NASSCOM, which is industry. So that's incentive number one. Government has invested on the platform. It is free to sign up for any Indian above the age of 16. So there are no subscription charges for getting onto this platform and consuming content. Much of the early stage content, so digital fluency and foundational courses, are again for free. So you can, as a learner, consume content and write your assessments, get your certifications, and you don't have to pay anything. Some of the higher end courses are charged, but they're deeply discounted by the content provider. And if, as a learner, I would pass those courses, which means I go through the government, defined, which is the curriculum defined assessment, then I get back a direct benefit transfer of 50% of the course fee into my bank account directly. So I get another 50% subsidy if I pass the program. So there's a lot of incentive for learners to actually engage with this platform. On top of that, industry is looking at this as their initial screen for interviewing people. So that's an added incentive. I mean, my personal belief is that no amount of fiscal incentive alone will drive, learning. Learning has to also carry with it certain incentives which are more related to knowledge, career, employability, and so on and so forth. So even that is significantly embedded into this, the way we've structured the curriculum. Hope this answers, Dr. Rami.
That answers it very well. And I actually have a follow-up question, but I'll keep that for the next round. I'll move ahead with Engineer Anas. Engineer Anas, let me try to go back to the notes that I've taken through your discussion. You mentioned there are 4 components of human capability, which is, basic skills, future skills, the value, and the knowledge. Now, when we think about that, we also think about in order to be ready for the future, of course, we need to overcome the challenges that we have. And you've mentioned the supply and demand challenge. So now, when it comes to human capability development program, how do you see e-learning platforms in Saudi Arabia facilitate skills development to achieve the goals of human capability development program?
Thank you, Dr. Rami. We believe that training is going to be heavy for the next 5 to 10 years. We're planning to train for the next 5 years almost 500,000 citizens. This cannot be done in classical way. We cannot do it all in classrooms. So technology is definitely, and e-learning is definitely a venue that we are already utilizing, and especially after the COVID crisis, the emergence of e-learning tools and the adaptation from students and professionals to the cyberspace and the digital tools has been remarkable. We did not leave anyone behind. All students were connected, either through the e-learning platforms or through other means, and we believe we should capitalize on that. It should be the new norm. So definitely e-learning should continue and will continue. It will also enable collaboration between different institutions within the kingdom, whether universities or training institutes, to offer certain courses that are not offered in some local or regional communities. So if I'm in Riyadh, I could take a course in Jeddah or in Dubai or in New York. So this is something that we're embracing not only nationally, but also globally with other partners in the region.
I truly appreciate that, Engineer Anas. Let me just say it for the record, the Human Capability Development Program is actually one of my favorite programs within the division, and I believe it's very important as it touches a lot of lives, a lot of mentalities. Let me go back to Ms. Bakina and ask you one question, and we'll go for another round of questions. You mentioned COVID-19, and I believe COVID-19 gave us the momentum of, if e-learning wasn't in a good way in the past, now people believe the importance of that, and maybe it gave us the momentum. And you also mentioned the disadvantaged groups, and I could think about the groups that I've met in my life who were at disadvantage when it comes to the traditional education, and now I'm thinking about when it comes to the e-learning and the opportunities that they have right now. What if they don't have access to them? So talking about acceptance, the question is, when it comes to the European Union, how is the industry acceptance for the learners who have gained the skills through the platforms?
Yeah, it's a difficult question because, yeah, when we speak of Europe, we speak of many countries, and the situation is different in every country. If I would say Estonia, for example, you all know probably that the acceptance is absolutely good. And there is recognition of e-learning platforms and all learning happening online. So that absolutely is working well in Estonia. But in countries like Southern European countries like Greece or Italy or Spain or Portugal, then it's not necessarily the case, because the traditional learning and the traditional face-to-face trainings and qualifications are still predominantly more accepted by the industry as well. It's different when we speak of France, Western and Northern European countries, where indeed there is maybe an older experience with e-learning, and therefore also a better acceptance of that learning by the industry as well. And I think it also depends a lot on what type of learning are we talking about, because obviously in Europe, being a very traditional continent in some ways, real qualifications are qualifications that are acquired through a full diploma degree that you went through a university or school, whatever. So now with the digital revolution, new skills are required. Those skills maybe do not require a full degree to some extent, and therefore there is a slow move to acceptance of online courses. And Europe is also trying to develop more certifications and quality assurance measurements in order to ensure that this learning is actually of quality. And because there is a very big offer of online learning, that one is coming from the public side through universities, and the other one from the private sector. And for the private sector to be accepted, even by its own industry, sometimes it's difficult because of the accreditation and quality assurance requirements that are very maybe to some extent more rigid in Europe, is slowly changing, but we are not yet there. And the online courses remain still less recognized than they should be because of this issue of quality assurance.
Thanks a lot, and thanks for bearing with me as I gave you a loaded question about the European Union, but I guess this allowed us to get a couple of examples from you. Now, let me circle back with Mr. Navanat and ask you the next question. You mentioned the incentives. Now, when we talk about the industry itself, how is the industry acceptance for the learners who gain the skills through the platform? And I think we touched on that. And the follow-up, I will ask the question on terms of the bridging itself. Now, when we think about facilitating the bridging, how do you facilitate bridging the gap between academia and the industry itself?
So, like I mentioned earlier, Dr. Rami, the entire content on the platform is curated industry. And therefore, it is always by design aligned to fulfill industry's needs. And that is one of the most distinguishing part of this platform and of what we are trying to do here. Therefore, the industry, if things change in industry level, they come back to us and tell us, we will help you curate this additional text. Actually, some of the larger players in the industry adopt maybe 50, 100, a couple of hundred universities, and they start embedding this curriculum in the third year and the fourth year. So basically, in the fourth, fifth, in the fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth semesters of engineering, in order for them to consume it, and they have their own assessments. So they, by the end of, in terms of any of gone through this cycle, are faster, independently productive than most people from high street. So it is, there's a lot of hand-holding and there's a lot of curation involved with the industry, because we're bridging the gap for them. I mean, the objective itself is to bridge their gap.
Thank you, Mr. Navanat. I appreciate that. Now, Engineer Anas, let me ask you this question. We've mentioned the incentives when it comes to the governmental, and we mentioned how things are bridged between academia and the industry itself. And we've talked about the acceptance level, whether from the learner perspective or the supplier itself. Now, when it comes to Human Capability Development Program, how does Human Capability Development Program envisions encouraging such platforms in your role?
Thank you, Dr. Rami. We are looking at coaching and mentorship to start from the early journey of skilling in the students or in the schools. So coaching and mentorship will start early on. People should know what are the changes on the labor market. What does it mean to be a pilot or a doctor, and what skills do you need to gain early on, and what future will you have? So this is one. Second, also there will be multiple stages of assessment, where people would have a clarity on their capabilities, their skills, their personalities, their preference, and being coached and mentored to choose the right pathways. Third, we will definitely invest a lot on extracurricular activities, incentivize and nudge positive behavior when it comes to skilling themselves and self-learning and self-education. With technology, we believe that the opportunities are limitless. So today, you do get nudged from your Apple Watch that you haven't walked or you haven't exercised. We want to use that also for skilling. Have you read something? Have you been able to develop any personal skills this month or this week, especially with the skill registry that we're trying to develop within the national skills framework. So we would have more of a multiple fronts where we incentivize and encourage and nudge positive behavior to embrace skilling in general, and using online platform as an easy and convenient option.
Thank you, Engineer Anas. We're definitely in an era, and we are at a time we're actually enjoying those platforms and those new techniques, and definitely things are not the same when it comes to learning and education and skilling or reskilling. I have my last question to Ms. Brakina, which is how does the lifelong learning platform facilitate achieving citizenship competence in the European key competency framework?
Another challenge for us lately, because indeed, as the pandemic hit a lot of citizenship issues came out of it as well, due to a lot of misinformation, disinformation, media literacy issues. So and yeah, it's global challenges. So a lot of discussions has been going on in the European Parliament about citizenship as a competence. It's also part, of course, of the European framework of key competences for lifelong learning. Citizenship is a particular competence that is recognized as a valuable and important one. It's an area where the Union, as a union, cannot really interfere, because it's up to the member states to decide the values, attitudes that they want to teach at school, university, or in other forms of learning. So it's a very debatable topic, but we as an organization, what we try to do is that we try to promote more community work, more work about bringing together different education and learning providers to promote values of participation, of citizenship, shared common values of the European Union or of the member states. So we try to create more space for exchange between these different providers, and also promoting the idea of more participation in the society, more democratic structure in schools, in universities, in the training as well institutions, because we believe that indeed it's very important that when we look at the training provision, we look at the learner-centered approach. So the center is the learner, what are its needs and its hopes, I think it's very important to promote the idea that learning is a way of improving citizenship as well in society. So we tried in many ways. At the moment, this report of the Parliament will be adopted in March. So we hope that after this adoption of the Parliament report, member states will follow with a competence framework that will be mainstreamed in the different education and training providers. But again, citizenship should still stay an experience that we live rather than a theory that we learn. If you see what I mean, yeah, I think there is still a lot of work to do, and it's also a topic that is changing with the global changes. We are not anymore a citizen of only city and a region or a country we are in, but of all the world. So I hope this answers your question.
It did, and just to echo the last sentence you mentioned, we're definitely in an era where everything is globalized, internationalized, everything is connected, and that's the beauty of this technology. I would like to thank you all on behalf of the National E-Learning Center and the International Conference on E-Learning for Human Capability Development. We thank our distinguished speakers for this insightful session and our participants for being very interactive during this session. Please note our next session will start at 8 p.m. KSA time, which is about 50 minutes from now. And the session will be focused on intergovernmental experience and the policy perspective. Once again, Mr. Nabanat Samiyar, Engineer Anas Mdefer, Ms. Brekina Shumaki, thank you so much and have a great night.
Thank you very much. Thanks for getting us.